Hey everyone, thank you for joining me today. I'm Orr, VP Product here at Groundcover. I have with me Amir, who has been living the challenges of how do we move over customers from legacy observability providers over to Groundcover. How could we make it as seamless, as easy, and as painless as possible? Thanks for joining me, Amir. It's going to be a fun little talk. We'll be able to kind of go and show you guys what it is we're going to do today. Please, any questions, any comments, this is for you. Feel free to make it as interactive as we can, and hopefully it'll be interesting. Cool, let me share my screen with you all, and let's go ahead and run it. So we're going to talk today about migrations. What did we do in order to make the world as easy as possible to go and to move over from a legacy provider to Groundcover? What's involved? How did we go through this journey? What was the product thinking, the engineering thinking? Where are we today? And the best part of all of that, how do we go and show that to you? How do we demo it to you? How do we let you feel how it is in the application? And what we did on the ground itself, what you could ultimately go and enjoy over there. Let's get into it, and let's talk a little bit about this, Amir, and the journey you went through with the engineering team over here.
Yeah.
So to go and to get the data into Groundcover has never been easier. We have a combination of solutions that allow you to go into within, just minutes be able to go and see your entire world. We have our eBPF sensor. You install it as a daemon set. It sees your entire environment, no holes, no gaps. Basically, you have a safety net across your entire application, your entire ecosystem to go and see all of that telemetry. So traces, logs, metrics, it just comes through. You could dual ship, whether it's OpenTelemetry, whether it's Datadog, you have that instrumentation already in place. You could just forward that over to Groundcover, and throughout your process of going and setting up your environment, you'll be able to go and get all of that data that you worked hard to instrument prior to arriving to us. And you have a number of different integrations, none of which do we charge by. You're able to go to benefit from our volume decoupled pricing, where we will only price by the number of nodes you have, but at the same time be able to pull data in from hyperscalers, AWS, and GCP, Azure, MongoDB, Redis, etc., and quite a bit more. So you have the ability to pull everything in. You could connect that to your eBPF-based sensor data, to the data coming out of OTel or your Datadog agent, and basically be able to just run with it, having the data available to you from the beginning. And that's one part of the equation, but obviously that's not everything. So let's talk a little bit about, given all of that, why did we decide to go on this journey of migration? So maybe Amir, you could talk a little bit about this.
Yeah, so I think that if there's one word that engineers don't want to hear is migration, right? It's terrible. No one wants to deal with it, and whether it's migration from one database to another or from one observability vendor to another. Even if your new observability product is shiny, is ultra fast, like all the data is there, BYOC is awesome, still migration might be a huge pain. You have your assets that you built over years in Datadog or other platforms, and you want to move them. So we heard this pain from customers, from multiple customers, and like it's something that we always wanted to solve.
Yeah.
And I think, yeah.
So people speak to us, and it's not just the cost involved of the application itself, right? It's the cost of the human capital that you're going to invest into this effort, into this project. And we understood that we want to minimize that. And that's kind of the journey we went down over here. So very exciting. Let's talk a little bit about the process. We had lessons we learned along the way. It wasn't always, a straight line to get to those understanding. What did we kind of go and do? Talk through a little bit of the process over here to get to the state we're at now.
So when we started, we were quite naive, I would say. We thought that, we have LLMs, right? And what is it? Like a monitor, a dashboard? It's just a JSON schema. It shouldn't be that difficult to translate it from the Datadog format to the ground cover format. And we were naive, and then we said, maybe we need to just split this into widgets, or maybe just try to only translate the queries. And then we realized that LLMs are not the solution for that, or not alone. We wanted to make sure that everything is accurate, that everything is deterministic, meaning that you can rerun it and try to migrate multiple monitors with almost the same queries, and you'll get the same results, right? Because you have to compare them against others, against other monitors, and against your monitors in your original observability vendor. Then we actually realized that this is something, and building this engine of translating monitors and dashboards to ground cover is something that you can only build with LLMs, right? So maybe LLM is not the solution for the translation itself, but it's definitely the solution for building a process that can actually translate that.
And it superpowered your ability as a PM to be able to go and really feel the solution, right?
Yeah. During this process, I opened hundreds of PRs of fixing and building this entire engine of translating queries from the Datadog format to ground cover format, and then the actual schemas, right? So in the heart of it, you have the query. In Datadog, you have two different query languages, the DDSL and DDQL, that are equivalent to metric SQL and GCQL. So you have to be able to actually translate them, to understand them very, very deeply, and then translate them to the format of metric SQL or GCQL. And you also have to make sure that everything, the entire data is there in ground cover and is mapped correctly. So you have metric A, and in ground cover, it's metric B. So you have to understand this entire mapping set. And of course, then you need to be able to understand each and every node in the original vendor and translate it to the equivalent in ground cover.
Yeah. And it was a journey. It was a journey. I think we probably have the biggest catalog of documentation of metrics available in legacy observability providers anywhere.
Yeah.
Right. But beyond their documentation, beyond any other source, and it's an interesting side effect of going down this journey.
Definitely.
So throughout this, I think from a product perspective as well, we always wanted to kind of make sure that we understood what was the piece that could break over here. When you go down a journey that's so wide and so deep, it just covers the entire world. What is a dashboard? It's a representation of probably 1,000 different features that are represented, and being able to translate each of those. What is a monitor with all of the different knobs that you could have? It's very in depth. And so we knew we wouldn't be able to cover every piece of that right up front. We knew we wouldn't be able to go and validate that throughout the first week, but we wanted to make sure that the biggest risk, the translation layer that you talked about, the mapping of the data itself, the representation of what is the meaning of the metric, the place that we're not able to do that, and how do we deal with that and find the ability to represent that back to the users, be able to go and understand all of that as quickly as possible so that we could ultimately build out a solution here that gives the best possible result for our customer. So that was, to me, a really interesting piece of how do we take the unknowns, the known unknowns up front, try to go and validate them, and then kind of have the slog tail where we go and get all of this work in. That brings us to this point of the journey, probably about a year or so into it from when we first naively approached, a JSON is a JSON, and we'll take it from there, and now be able to go and to kind of take it to that final point where we could give that real value to customers. And it kind of leads us here to the friction was a key element, which I think is really meaningful. Anywhere in product, as much friction as possible is really meaningful. And here we have unbelievable customers who along the entire way from day zero said, this gives us tremendous value. They ran this. they felt it, they experienced it, and we were able to go and to really go and understand from the real pains that they felt throughout this process of migration. Cool. So what was success in this project for us? How did we kind of go and define this? What was important to us?
So my eyes immediately catches the fun and easy. Yeah, but let's begin from the first one. So first of all, we wanted to be hyper fast. When we experimented with LLMs and this, we understood that it's not scalable, right? Our customers have tons of monitors and dashboards, and migrating all of them can take a long time. So we wanted it to be fast, and then we wanted it to also be deterministic. I already touched on it, but you have to get the same input always for the same monitor, right? You have to be able to debug it. You have to be able to once teach your engine, oh, this function is equivalent to this one, and then see it over and over. And fun and easy, I mean, yeah, that's as much as migration could be, but we really wanted it to feel like magic. We want you to bring your keys from data or Coralogics, whatever, and in one click or almost one click, just see everything, your entire data, your monitors, your dashboards in ground cover. It's wow. And also we understood that migration can be quite a project, right? We have customers with hundreds of and even more people in R&D, and we know that managing this process can be like an entire process. So we wanted to help them, to keep them in the loop, to explain them what we do and reflect very, very clearly what succeeded and what's not. And of course, as always, and with everything we do, it must be self-serve, right? We wanted
I mean,
to
ultimately, developers don't want to talk to the companies providing their tooling, right? They want to be able to have it work, and they appreciate the tech behind it. So to be, all of this stuff connects to a meaningful solution. It needs to be fast, it needs to be easy, it needs to go and be real in terms of the results that it gives, and to make sure that when we say something is true, it's true. And we need to be able to reflect state back to the user in the best way possible. So let's talk a little bit about what did we actually do to reach this point. Keep in mind, everyone listening, this has been a journey, and throughout that journey, we went and we did uplift across multiple different places to be able to have it reach the point that it is today, that we're going to show you in just a little bit, I promise. So first and foremost, we kind of filled holes in different elements of data that we saw we wanted to go and make sure were complete. We were able to bring in more integrations. We were able to go and build in more metrics that we saw that other customers had, and they wanted to go and reflect within their assets over there. We went and we built out a query language that was robust to represent everything within, Datadog over there in a way that allows you to translate it, right? Amir, you were very intimately involved in the building of that query language, and it was probably one of the most powerful enablers of us at ground cover to be able to open up for this migration, but also to allow our agent to be able to speak in terms that the UI could just serve it and visualize anything. Uplifted our dashboards, uplifted our monitors, being able to go and to make sure that we're able to go and have this, feature parity essentially with such a wide offering. And it all kind of came together to something really meaningful in my eyes. It ultimately became kind of like a viewpoint of how do we make our product better for the stuff that customers really need. Because if we build the stuff that they're using and they were able to migrate it over, right, that means that we're building the right elements. We have the features that are actually valuable for them.
Yeah, I think that from our perspective, our very narrow perspective, this is the dream of that every product manager can dream of, right? You actually know what your customers use and what they don't. So yeah.
we had essentially a compass to bring us to the point of this is what's important, which is unbelievable. And in terms of how do we know it worked? Well, ultimately, we want to save our customers time. So we measured it based off of what is a migration that would normally take with the number of assets that was there, and to be able to save 70+% of that time. And to have our customers that are coming from the legacy providers go and use it and benefit from it and engage with it, which is something that we're seeing on a daily basis, kind of going and having those interactions. And having it be understood, where do you need to invest your time? So like we said before, it's not just translate to done, it's also reflecting what isn't necessarily working. Where is there data that isn't effectively represented? Maybe you have stuff in Datadog that's currently broken. Maybe as part of this migration, you want to make sure that that's properly done, right? So maybe there's metrics that aren't even available there, and you have monitors running on it. So we wanted to go and make sure that we're showing that in a clear way so that users could decide how to properly investigate it, where the time should go to migration project.
Yeah.
And now I believe we get to the fun stuff. Amir, I'm going to hand it over to you. Yeah, we're not going to waste time over here. We're going to jump into the demo and be able to show these guys everything that we built.
So this is the migration portal, and it's very interesting that we put it right in the sidebar, because we wanted to highlight how important this feature is and how powerful it is, and make sure that all of our customers coming using self-serve can see it and actually make sure that they get the value. So I'm going to focus on this demo on Datadog and not on CoralLogix, and show you how a migration process looks like. So when creating a migration process, I give it a name, and then I fetch assets. I fetch the assets from Datadog. I need to enter the site, the API key, the application key. That's all. And then I click fetch. Everything loads. It takes a few seconds, and you'll immediately see a list of your data sources coming from Datadog. So in this case, we have multiple AWS accounts that are connected to Datadog, and we can see that they are used in 5 monitors and 13 dashboards, and actually have metrics, and they are already connected to these accounts, right? And we can also see that we need to connect MongoDB and Rabbit in order to see one per dashboard. One dashboard.
That was something that was surprising to me. We basically saw a lot of customers going and trying to migrate prior to even having the data. So it's having an inventory of what you have in your world that you want to move over. Is it so simple?
Yeah, it's even not that simple to see this data on Datadog. So I would say that it's even clearer here, right? So let's say that we connected all of the data sources, and now we can actually move and see the dashboards. So here we have multiple dashboards. Gonna search for this one. Yeah. Okay. So before I filter the list, it's actually interesting to see in monitors what you just said earlier, right? So it's not only that we fetch the monitor name and the type and reflect clearly if it's a supported type or not, and even show you a warning if let's say we don't support a certain feature and we made some changes. We actually show you the interesting metadata to understand if this monitor needs to be migrated to ground cover or not. We show you the status on the original platform on Datadog. Show you the type. We show you when it was last modified and when it was created, to help you actually manage your migration project.
What does status mean, Amir? Could you go into that for a second?
Yeah, sure. So status is actually the status of this monitor on Datadog. So let's say that I have a monitor that is actively alerting right now. It's probably a useful monitor that I use on a daily basis, right? But let's say that I have a monitor with no data. What does it mean? Does it mean that I actually need to migrate it to ground cover if it was like it already had no data in the original platform? So we added all of that to help you decide and actually focus on what's matter. Let's take a look at the dashboards, because I think like the wow effect is even more impressive than with monitors. Let me search for Kubernetes dashboard. Well, this is a dashboard that was migrated in one click from Datadog. And it's actually interesting to dive into the details here. So let's pick this one, this widget, for example. Simple start, right? Showing how many clusters I had in my environment over the last hour. And when looking at the original JSON, this was the original JSON definition from Datadog. So you can see here DDQL with this built-in with this metric that you get from Datadog with, let's say, a function and variables, right? And even like a key named cube cluster name. And you can see the aggregate or how to aggregate it over time and what is the data source and the formula it uses. And we're looking at the same widget on ground cover, you actually see a different metric name, which is the equivalent of this metric that is coming to like you get from by default from your ground cover sensor. And you can also see that we made the translations to actually match the variables and your formula and the phase. And we even knew that for this metric, for example, we need to map the key cube cluster to cluster, which is the correct name in ground cover. So there's a lot of knowledge and tribal knowledge that was added to the logic here to make sure that everything just works, right? In a simple click.
And what type of representations could be done over here in terms of what could be translated over?
So more than like, I think the number is 94% or something like that from the widgets that customers actually use on Datadog are already supported in ground cover. So of course, stat widgets and tree maps and log tables in time series and top lists are supported. And when something is unsupported, like for example status checks, we show it clearly on the dashboard's grid. And for us, we use it down the line as the North Star of what we should build next. So yeah, we use it as a compass, as you said, for what we should focus on when building the next features around dashboards.
Amazing. So I have a few questions that we had prepared that came ahead of time, but I'd love to open it up first of all to the people that are here. I see there's quite a few of you, and do any of you guys have questions that you would like to have Amir answer over here and dig in on topics? Feel free. Anything and everything. While we see if there's any that come from the crowd organically over here. Amir, I have one. How do you make sure a migrated dashboard or monitor actually works and not just that the configuration was translated?
Wow. Oh, that's a difficult question, but basically what we did during this process was to actually develop a back office tool that we use to analyze that dashboards actually work. So basically this tool it was implemented as part of this process. And what we do is that when we fetch assets from Datadog and migrate them to the ground cover format, we also validate each and every one of the queries against live data from your account to make sure that your queries actually return data, and when they are not, to reflect it back on the data sources page, on the product pages. And
Yeah, that sounds challenging, knowing firsthand that not all monitors will return data, right? Like sometimes you could have logs that might have a monitor that will never occur. How did we deal with those types of instances? How did we, differentiate between the different types of availability of data and lack of data?
yeah, so first of all, we have some knowledge, let's say, on what your status on Datadog is, right? Do you actually use these metrics? In how many monitors and dashboards you use them? And we also know when we fetch assets, we also fetch the status of each one of the metrics. So we actually know if this metric was available in Datadog in the last few days. Um, so we have a good signal on what used to work on Datadog, and then we try to make sure that everything works the same on Branco.
Yeah. I think to me, the piece that might be most important here is not we're able to translate 70% in one click and make it really easy and be able to push that past the line, but is to make sure that we could accurately represent the 30% that users need to continue to work on and look at and dig in. And to differentiate between those two is maybe more important than the amount we cover or the speed we're able to provide that translation. You almost know where's the places you need to put that effort in. As someone who's gone through those migration processes in the past, if I had that, that would have been a game changer. Okay, cool. Any limitations around environment size here? Anything we had to do to deal with that?
No, not really. I mean, BYOC and the scale that we support was we actually built it in mind to support massive scale, and I think we already dealt with a few customers with massive scale, right? So it's quite a battle tested, and actually, as long as you have more assets and more data, it's like the more accurate it becomes. You have more data to compare with and to actually understand the status.
Okay, great. And I have one last question here. And again, if anyone else wants to continue to ask, we'll stay for another minute after or reach out to us after the call. You're all going to get recordings of this. Feel free to reach out to the team. You run this migration. How much work is left after the fact? What is going to be needed from organization to go and turn that into a meaningful rip and replace where you could just turn off Datadog and you could go and move over entirely to ground cover?
Yeah, so it's very depends. It depends on the organization, right, and the way that they work. We had customers where the admins was in charge of the migration project, and their job was to make sure that just everything works the same as it was on Datadog. But with some customers, they actually spreaded the migration project with multiple teams. So we made everything we can, and we are still actively improving that to reflect the status of each and everything. But at the end, you must make sure that everything works as you expect, right? You have to actually use these dashboards and actually go over these monitors and make sure that everything works as thank you, Aya, as expected. Want to
So we have
this question?
yeah, we have a question from Aya. It's, will Grafana be supported in the roadmap? Yes, it will. We want it on a personal level. When we set out with ground cover 4 years ago, we built embedded Grafana, and over time we had customers using it. But then over the past year and a half or so, we've really invested within our native dashboards, within our native monitors. We see this as the path forward. It allows our agent to interact with them in a much more meaningful way. We're able to create those assets via our agent. We have a lot of upside of using it. So we want to allow the customers that are on there to be able to move over in an efficient way as well. Roughly speaking, I think we're probably going to get to that piece of this towards the beginning of the year, right? So maybe a quarter and a half or so from now to be able to go and to work through that and include Grafana. And thank you again for the kind words. Cool. Guys, thank you so much for attending and listening to us, allowing Amir to show you the platform. And I'm excited for all of you to hopefully take a deeper look at ground cover. Feel free to reach out to the team with any questions you have, to take a look at everything we're doing over here, and to feel the power of migration tooling yourself. Thank you. Have a great day.